the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. I'm the president of Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. You can go to my website, emailrevealer.com. You can go there. You can get an autographed copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. Also, too, if you have any kind of PI needs, if you have, let's see, an asset search. Let's say you're getting divorced. You want to find out how much assets your husband has, your wife has, hidden away. If they're hiding any money on you, they got any secret bank accounts you don't know about. You're about to enter into litigation with somebody. You want to know if they got any hidden assets. An asset search. We find their hidden bank accounts and even come up with some more information in that. Adoption investigations. If you've been separated from your children or your parents or your biological children or parents through the adoption process, we can reunite you. That's always a rewarding type of investigation. Locates. You got the holidays coming around. Want to locate an old boyfriend, an old girlfriend, your boyfriend, and we can locate them for you. Very little information, just as much as a last name and a date of birth, or a last name and a month of birth, or previous city. Sometimes if it's an uncommon name, just the name, we can find them throughout the whole United States. Email revealer.com. Don't forget what's that thing called? Shows like the T-Dom. Get the T-Dom. Life-changing tea. Best stuff on earth. I've been drinking this stuff now for 10 weeks. You take these 2 tea bags, you put them in some hot water, you boil them up, and then you let it steep overnight for 8 hours. And then you add to a gallon of water. And you have one glass of this tea in the morning, man. Fix you right up. I was already today, man. By the way, I'm down to 188. It's the lowest I've been in a long, long time. Okay, I was having trouble breaking at 211, man, but now I'm all the way down to 190, and today I'm 180. I was going on a bike ride today. My daughter talked me into going on a bike ride. Pushed my bike outside, and I got a flat tire. So I ran it over to the bike shop, got it repaired. I'm going to go right after the show, go for a bike ride, and go for a hike later on, too. We got that nice, warm Nevada weather right now here at the Opperman. So getthetea.com. Check out their website, too. They got all kinds of supplements and herbs and remedies and things on there for you. Whatever ails you, check out getthetea.com. Please check out the website and see what they got. I'm going to do a telethon tomorrow live, I think, because I haven't been told exactly what time I'm going on, but I'm pretty sure I'm doing a telethon tomorrow, which will be a lot of fun. A little telethon segment. I think I'm going to be talking about Michael Cohen and this latest scandal with Michael Cohen, where this genius, you gotta love this guy, man. You know, you gotta love this guy. This genius, what he does is, you gotta pay off some money to a porn star, right? And I can sympathize with that. These things come up, right? Every now and then, you gotta make a payoff, right? These things come up, and Michael Cohen, he's been around the block. He's a fixer, right? He's a real sharp guy. By the way, you know, this guy used to have his law office in the back of a cab company. He also sold these taxi cab medallions in New York City. So there's a great article, I think it's in the New York Times, about how this guy wound up here in this situation is just but he was brokering these taxi medallions and running these taxi management companies. And then it was like saying he had more taxis and medallions, which is a common thing that goes on with these taxi medallions in New York. You may not know about this, but I used to have a horse and carriage medallion in New York City. When I got my nightclub deal, when I bought into the nightclub, I used to own a nightclub back in New York City back in the 80s. In order to get into that deal, I loaned one to the current owners in order to buy a stake in the club. But I was smart. I didn't just say, well, okay, let me just buy a stake in this club. I said, I'll buy a stake in the club, but I want security for the money I'm putting up. I want to put a lien on something. So we always had a taxi cab horse and carriage medallion, which was worth several $100,000. And then when the club went out of business, I said, well, I want my money back. It's time for you guys to pay me. I'm going to get Michael Cohen. Let me get him Cohen on the phone to straighten you out. So what we did was, as a matter of fact, I believe I hired a couple of Bodils guys, and we got in our car. We had a limousine and a car, and we chased in the horse and carriage. We pulled it over with our cars like cattle rustlers, like horse thieves. And we jumped down and said, hey, look, I got a security. We're seizing this medallion off of your horse and carriage. And they used to have these Irish cab drivers back in those days. I hate to make fun of the Irish. They got Shane helping me out over there. Shane McKay helped me out with the audio and stuff like that. But we actually hijacked, not jacked, it was legal. What we did, everything was legal. And we commandeered this horse and carriage, and we recaptured my handsome cab medallion back into my possession, which then we put on the open market and we sold it. There were so many fines against the damn thing, too. We wanted to lose money on that deal anyway. What are you going to do? Michael Cohen, this character here, what a shady life he's had. So he's got this deal where he has to pay off a porn star. Okay, fine. And I could see getting that assignment. Ed, we need to take care of this porn star. She's extorting money. We need you to negotiate a deal and make the payment. And or at least he wanted. All right, because I would kind of say, well, yeah, just convert the money into cash. I'll bring it over and get a receipt. I'll drive over there with it, with the $130K. Okay. I'll ride my bike. I got the tire all fixed. I can ride my bike over there. So, I can understand it. You got to pay for the star. Okay, keep your mouth shut. Okay, these things happen in life. So Michael Cohen goes and he set up this little company, an LLC called Essential Consulting. It's a consulting company is a good way because you have no inventory or nothing. You don't need a location. It's an easy way to open up a bank account. Hey, I got a consulting company. Open up a bank account. It's a business bank account, right? And then very little paperwork and everything great. And this is all simple stuff too. It's not like you have to go out and get licensed. Anything like that. It's all simple stuff. You just file an LLC. It costs like $200. You pick a state that's favorable to you. By the way, Nevada's very favorable for this kind of thing because Nevada doesn't report anything to the federal government. Did you know that? If you open up an LLC or corporation in Nevada, they don't have anything to do with the federal government. Okay, and there's no state tax here either. So it's very beneficial to have a corporation in the state of Nevada. There's other states as well, but I prefer Nevada when I'm paying off my porn stars. Now, also too, in the state of Nevada too. You don't have to name you can hire a agent. You don't have to name the president of the corporation. You can have the registered agent and have the officers of the company can be held silent as well. You don't have to list their names in the corporation paper. No one knows who owns the corporation. There's a lot of stuff that benefits the Nevada corporation. But anyway, I think he chose a Delaware corporation which has a lot of the same benefits. Untraceable activity. To pay off this porn star. But Michael Cohen, in his ultimate wisdom, what he decides to do is he then uses that same corporation that was just set up 10 days before the election to pay off Stormy Daniels $130,000 to go around and start shaking down all these companies like AT&T and this Korean arms manufacturer, and then this Russian oligarch has a cousin in the United States. So the company is under his cousin's name, where they do it as a pharmaceutical company. I think he got like $4 million from that guy, right? So listen, and they're saying on TV, well, this is to get access to the president, and certainly would have access to the president, but how much, quote unquote, access do you need to pay $4 million for it? Even AT&T wasn't paying $4 million; they paid like $1 million, and they're paying $50,000 a month. So there's obviously more going on with these shakedowns, these Michael Cohen shakedowns, that I would assume, from my experience, being involved in shakedowns. Okay, just told my business. Okay, so I would suspect, by the way, too, now when we're on this topic, Avenatti, right? It may have gotten a little bit over his head in this situation here. Now, I know a little bit about obtaining, I just talked about it in my little commercial for myself, asset search, okay? And when I do asset search, my asset searches are FCRA compliant, Fair Credit Reporting Act compliant. And the reason why they're compliant, first of all, I taught a class to private investigators and other people doing employment screening and stuff like that on how to do SA compliant employment screening investigations. Okay, so I know a little bit about the area, and when you're obtaining people's private banking information, it's a real slippery slope. And I even happen to notice, okay, maybe a lot of other people didn't notice this, but Michael Avenatti about 2 weeks ago posted on Twitter complaining about DocuSearch, okay, which is like an information broker type company. Well established one that business going on here. I've worked for some of the biggest ones myself. Okay, a lot of them will have private investigators on retainer that they purchase information from. I was in the information broker business, buying information. Email.com is sort of an information broker business. If you want to buy a phone number, a name and address, or a phone number, plate, we sell that information. We buy it and sell it. Information broker. But Michael Avenatti, I noticed, about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, mentioned DocuSearch. They complained about how they were violating the Privacy Act by obtaining people's banking information. Okay, so it seems to me about 2 weeks ago he was out there shopping around for someone to fund this banking information, and he kept going on years saying he wanted. I guess it's the Federal Reserve who issues these suspicious transaction reports. No, it's suspicious activity reports. Okay, there's two different kinds: suspicious transaction reports and suspicious activity reports. Okay, so Michael Avenatti was going on. They should be releasing these suspicious activity reports. And obviously, someone who had access to those suspicious activity reports got on their little computer and looked up Michael Cohen, got the information, and slipped it over to good old Michael Avenatti. Now, Michael Avenatti could find himself in a jackpot here, and I'll tell you why. When they first passed the laws against pretexting, which is they made it unlawful to obtain people's personal banking information. Okay, back in the, I guess it was in the 90s. I know a little something about this too. We used to do this back in the old days. When you wanted to get someone's personal business, personal banking information, what I would do is this. Let's say I want to investigate Danny Romero, the owner of American Freedom Radio, and I want to get a copy of his bank statements. I want to know how much money he has in his bank account. What I would do is first I'd run some reports. I'd find out his date of birth. I'd find out his social security number. I'd try and find out his mother's maiden name just in case, I got to that. And I'd call up the bank and I'd say, hey, I'm Danny Romero. I lost my bank statement. I need to know how much money I have in my account. I don't have my debit card in front of me at the moment. Can you help me out here? And they go, oh, yes, Mr. Romero, can you tell us your birth? Can you tell your address, where you live? Can you tell us your security number? And I can get all that information. It's a piece of cake to get that. Okay, that's 5 minutes, man, with the database companies, right? You get this information right away. That's how you do locates. That's how you do searches on people. Get all this information, you call up, and I'm him, and I give all that information. And I say, well, yes, Mr. Romero, you have $10,000 in your bank account. In your American Freedom Radio business account. Okay, in your Swiss account, you've got $1 million. Okay, right? Supposedly. Okay, maybe I got the wrong Danny Romero. I got the wrong Danny. But that's how you did this in the old days, and that was perfectly lawful. There was no problem then. Passed some laws. The Graham-Bailey Privacy Act and Pretexting Act, all kind of stuff like this. I could look it up. If I was writing an article about it, I've written many articles on this, by the way. And you could Google those. Just look up Ed Opperman, Fair Credit Reporting Act, compliant asset searches. You'll find my articles on. I've written many articles on this. So they had the law. They couldn't do that anymore. It's unlawful to do that. And what happened is that after they passed this law, they needed to make an example out of somebody. somebody. And who did they choose? They choose my friend Victor, who I knew for many, many years on Staten Island. He had a little information broker company. It wasn't a big company. It was a one-man show, you know? And it was one of these guys who had access to information, was buying and selling information, like a lot of guys were doing back days. And they set, and the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, set him up. And what they did was they had an agent contact him, and she claimed that she was just about to she was engaged to this man. They were just about to get married, and she was suspicious about his finances and his credit. And Mr. I don't want to say Victor's last name, but Mr. Can you help me out here? I'm just about to get married. I'm having cold feet, and he said, I'll do it for you. I'll tell you what, $300, whatever he charged. Back then, you couldn't get a lot of money for this kind of stuff. And he produced a report for bank accounts with the balances. I think I run whatever he did, right? He comes swooping into this guy's house. They raid him. The FTC can't arrest you, but they can sue you. They shut you down. They seize your assets, and they sue you. And they sued him in order to settle. He had to agree to pay back all he ever made, and agree never to shut down his business and move away. And he lives in upstate New York right now, like a broken man. Now, but he told me everything else. Okay, all right. Now, so Michael Avenatti right now pretty much is the same thing. He somehow obtained Michael Cohen's personal banking information and business banking information without authorization. And not only did he go to that extent to obtain it, but he published it. This is a ballsy move. This isn't something I would do. I wouldn't take that risk, even in a case this big where the whole press and the media and the judges are all behind because everybody hates Trump. You're still sticking your neck out way, way, way more than is healthy for you to be doing. So, but he does have this information. Now, he's shown Michael Avenatti agrees to report. By the way, he wrote a 7-page executive summary. Now, you can find out if you're on my Facebook page, at Opperman Facebook page, and you also, which is public to anybody, you can go there. You don't have to join, become a member, follow me, anything like that. Unless you annoy me, I have to block you immediately. Okay? I don't start sending messages either on Facebook. I get enough of those. Or you go to Michael Avenatti's Twitter account, or you just Google it, you can find it. And he has a very interesting, some of the people in this report happen to know. Okay, he mentions a couple of friends of mine in there, which is a whole other piece of misery in my life. But he has 7-page executive summary, he called it, right? And then very interesting, too. The first line in this thing, he says, this is the information we know as of this date. May be updated, and we may be able to have to confirm some things. Right away, there's a disclaimer right at the top of this thing. As soon as I read it, it says, why is he doing this? Okay, why is Michael Avenatti saying, hey, there could be more information, we might be coming up with more information? Why? Now, why now? He only produced in his report the deposits that went into this account, and not only of the deposits that he knew about, because we found out from some of his companies, like AT&T, they gave a lot more money to Cohen than Avenatti told in his 7-page executive summary there. But what he does show is the withdrawals from this account. The withdrawals or the transfers or the payments that come out of that account. Now, in my opinion, he has to have them. I can't imagine how he would get a report that would only have the deposits. Some people are speculating that he got the Know Your Customer reports. But by the way, he used to have access to that too as well. Know Your Customer. When all this terrorism happened in 2001, they changed the banking law. That it's pathetic that I know all this stuff. Okay, you know what I mean? It's pathetic that I know all this stuff, but this is just my work, man. This is what I do for a living, guys. It's not all glamorous. Let me tell you. Okay, I know all this stuff. The Know Your Customer Act was after 2001 World Trade Center bombing. What they did was they made these new laws and regulations, and you go in and try to open up a bank account. They have to ask you all kinds of questions to know who you are, and that goes to a report that later on Michael Avenatti somehow had access to. By the way, too, the reason why when you call up the bank and you try and get your own information from your own account and they ask you all those questions and they annoy the hell out of you for 10 minutes, that's because of this Graham Bailey. Some people call it Graham Bly, some people call it Graham Bailey. I haven't gotten straight on how to pronounce it, but some congressman passed law and who responded to the bill. And the reason why, when you call up and you're on the phone for them for 20 minutes verifying who you are by giving your social security number, is because of that law. Okay, so by the way, you can still get around if you want to, but it's not worth the hassle. But it can still be done. Michael Avenatti has to have copies also too of where this money went. He has to have the withdrawals. He has to have the dispersals, the wire transfers, or payments from a debit card if they even issued a debit card on this account, but or checks if they've issued him checks in this. He's gonna have to. Okay, he's gonna have where money went, and I guarantee you this: Mueller and Schneiderman, whoever's running the case, Schneiderman, because it just so happens that the guy who was running this investigation in the Southern District of Manhattan over there turns out to be a pervert, okay, who was beating up all his girlfriends out there and abusing him and stuff like that. So he had to resign his job. What a story! We are living, guys, in a time in history that's going to go down in history in this country like you cannot imagine. When you see they have these conventions, JFK conventions, and these Watergate conventions like Glenn Chladni and and Woodward and Bernstein and John Dean, 20, 30 years from now, they're going to have conventions about the Trump Russiagate, whatever they're going to call it, and all the characters going to show up. They're all going to be old and walking with canes and stuff like that. But this is going to be going down in history as a time in our country. Now, I don't know how people can still say there's no Russian collusion when we have a Russian oligarch giving $4 million to Michael Cohen. When we have the Steele dossier, and a lot of people, I'll get these stupid comments right away. People say, well, it's been better. Show me by who it's in discredit. It's been this. Show me by who. Show me where. I'm still waiting. I did a live show last week on Friday night where I sat back and I took phone calls. I said all day long on Twitter or on Facebook. I said, call me up and tell me when I'm wrong. Show me where this dossier is discredited. No one's been able to do this yet. I've showed you. One thing this dossier I could point to that would be accurate was the part where they said that Michael Cohen never went to Prague because Michael Cohen pulled out his passport and said, look, I've never been to Prague. We find out now the suspect, McClatchy, did a report saying that he did travel to Prague. He went to Jennifer, got on a button over there. Plus two, just because he showed his passport, Paul Manafort had like 4 or 5 passports, which seems to be kind of common with people in these areas too. That they're able to get multiple passports. I had case myself where when I was involved in that whole Sarah Palin thing, this person inserted their way into my life, and she was trying to get me to help her get phony passports, to try and set me up. I didn't take the bait though, man. I'm too smart for that. Too smart for you. Okay. Another thing that came up this week and involves this whole wacky situation here with Michael Cohen and all this stuff is Rudy Giuliani just today announced. Okay, after he sees all the scrutiny on Michael Cohen for selling influence, he just announced that he's resigning from his law firm to devote his time full time to messing up Donald Trump's case here with this Russiagate thing, with this Mueller investigation. By the way, why is Rudy Giuliani, if he's working for Trump, representing Trump in the Mueller investigation, the special prosecutor's investigation, why is he sticking his nose into this Stormy Daniels payoff? Why is he thinking about it at all? Why is he even inserting himself in and making comment or anything? It just makes no sense whatsoever. It's the biggest blunder. Trump should not be talking about any of this stuff. He didn't have anybody who's talking about any of this stuff. If I was the investigator involved in this case, I'm getting out of here. I don't want anything to do with it. This is crazy. But Giuliani just resigns from his own personal law firm. Now, why does he do that? Well, he just saw what happened to Michael Cohen. How's that? Okay. All right. When he says, hey, I don't want this scrutiny. Did you know that Giuliani picked up also Paul Manafort clients over there in Ukraine and all stuff like that when Manafort got with the jackpot? See his ankle bracelet on now? Okay. Did you know that? Okay. Now we got Giuliani picks up all those clients. Now he sees the scrutiny. By the way, man, now I'm wondering. See, I don't think that the Giuliani and Trump really knew about all the suspicious activity going on in Cohen's bank account. Because if they did, it's the last thing they'd be talking about home equity loans and all this crazy talk and Trump paid it back. I can't imagine they would even go near that can of worms unless they're just suicidal and just it's totally incompetent in every possible way. Otherwise, I can't imagine they even well, we were supposed to have Rob Scherder on the show today, and I don't know what's going on. Now he emailed me 12 saying, what happened was call at 3. We tried to call him. We got his voicemail, so we missed out on him. But we have coming up in the next 90 minutes James DiEugenio, who is from the website kennedysandking.com. And he just has a brand new book that just came out called, you hear my papers rustling to find it, JFK Assassination, The Evidence Today. Okay? And what he called. So he's going to be coming on. We're going to be talking about the King assassination. I just had him on for an hour the other day. In fact, yesterday I think I taped with him. I don't even remember. I'm so exhausted. I'm losing my mind here. But we taped with him for an hour the other day. We talked about MLK assassination and his new book, The JFK Assassination, The Evidence Today. And today I'm going to try and get him to talk too about Malcolm X and the RFK assassination. But he's an excellent guy. He knows all stuff right at the top of his head, man. Excellent work. I can't recommend his website enough, the kennedysandking.com. So we'll be getting into that today. Now, don't forget, tomorrow we're going to be live doing a telethon for Amy Villala, amyforthepeople.com. She's running for Congressional District CD4 here in Nevada. My daughter Vic volunteers over there. And we're going to be there to show support. Doing a fun telethon. I'm going to be simulcasting it on Spreaker at least. If I can get this laptop going, if I have time today, we'll get the laptop going. And I'll have it on Awake Radio as well. Okay, so I don't know what I was planning on talking about Michael Cohen and getting into this whole thing about how here we see Trump is supposed to be draining the swamp, and here we find out, oh my God, we're talking about millions, 50,000 here a month, 100,000 a month here, 100,000 a month there, being dropped into this Michael Cohen clown lap for the little bit of influence he can have over Donald Trump. So you're talking about draining the swamp. This is a flooding swamp. This is adding alligators to the swamp. You know what I mean? This is, snakes to the swamp. So this is the opposite of draining the swamp. But if we get someone like Amy Villala into Congress, that'll be actually draining the swamp. And we'll see actual dry land instead of swampland. So Amy's a sweetheart, and she's running for Congress down here. And if you listen to my past shows I've done with Amy Villala, did 2 shows with 2 interviews. She was a businesswoman. She was a CFO of a big company. I think it was a drug company, a pharmaceutical company. And businesswoman, mother, wife, the husband in the military, patriots. And what happened was her daughter went to the hospital for a clot and wound up dying because they wouldn't treat her. And then they did the bare minimum treatment, not because she didn't have insurance, because there's a lapse, because she was changing professions and she was moving around, and there was a lapse, a momentary lapse in her insurance that caused them to deny her health care and deny her treatment, and that culminated in her death. And there's a wrongful death suit at the hospital too as well. And it's a heartbreaking interview. The first one I did with Amy Villala. Second one's more about politics, because she came in to the... Anyway, she's running against the characters over there. And we got our support behind Amy Villala. I'll be there tomorrow. I don't know exactly what time. Oh, tomorrow I'm taking a ride to the Barstow. I got to get back in time for that. Damn. Okay. But I'm going to be doing this live telethon with Amy Villala. And I invited John Barber come along too, but I haven't gotten him the information over there of who he is and stuff like that. So I'll work on that as well. But coming up, we have James DiEugenio at kennedysandking.com, and his new book is JFK Assassination, The Evidence Today. So we'll be finishing up on MLK. I was always fascinated about who's that guy? James Earl Ray. I've always been fascinated about the prison escape, how this guy escaped from prison. I always found that whole episode in the whole MLK story to be underreported, and really, and I'm hoping that James has some. I'm sure he's got everything on the tip of his tongue. You know, he's one of these guys that knows the name of the guy who owned the novelty shop where James Earl Ray left his bag. You know, he's one of those guys, man. Knows his name. I tell you, when you get involved in these conspiracy investigations, it's just you really can get consumed by it, you know, and which is why, even though I do a lot of shows about JFK, I kind of gave up my JFK research and stuff like that way back years ago, because there's just so much misinformation and confusion inserted into everything that I think will ever really answer. Even with deathbed confessions, you can't even trust those. You know, there's deathbed confessions that conflict with each other. So, you know, somebody's, you know, who would make a deathbed confession with a, you know, lying? It's happening. You know, we see it happen before our eyes. It's just fascinating, the whole JFK. So we have James DiEugenio coming up. Show coming up. I just did a show last night. I interviewed, I did like 6 hours yesterday. I interviewed Chris Fields, who was one of the Oklahoma City bombing firefighters. And if you've ever seen a picture of the firefighter holding that poor little baby, and the baby's head is over and you know, he's trying to hold that baby. He's that firefighter. And the show turned into another show about post-traumatic stress disorder. We weren't planning on that. I wanted to plan for the topic of the show. I got to tell you, man, here's a guy that's what his new thing is now, is to speak on about the post-traumatic stress disorder for first responders. I got to sympathize with him, man. I got to tell you, I got PTSD myself, and I was trying to tell him, you know, you got these clients come in, they're in crisis in their life. They're not making good decisions. You see the boy rise, they're falling apart. And, you know, that's nothing. My guest is ready. Okay, so we're going to welcome now James DiEugenio, who I believe is in the middle of a hurricane right now. James, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, you got a little wind in the background. James, tell the audience, remind the audience.
Do you want me to turn that off?
Yeah, what is it?
It's a fan.
Yeah, turn that off, man.
All right, fine.
Okay, yeah, you're gonna have to take your clothes off, man, to cool off.
Okay.
James DiEugenio. The website is kennedysandking.com. The new book is JFK Assassination: The Evidence Today. Remind the audience, James DiEugenio.
Well, I had formerly been an educator and a writer. I retired from the education business about 2.5 years ago. So I devote all of my time now, all my spare time, of course, to investigating the major assassinations of the 1960s. JFK, King, Bobby Kennedy, and Malcolm X. You know, I tend to concentrate on the JFK case because that's the one where new documents are being declassified. All right, as we speak, they're being declassified. All right, and I'm reading them, and so that's essentially what I do. I published Destiny Betrayed, which was completely rewritten in about 2012, 2013, in a new edition. And then I also co-edited a book called The Assassinations. That particular book is about all 4 assassinations of the 1960s, or that I already just mentioned. Right? And then I've just released another book called The JFK Assassination and the Evidence Today. particular book is focused on news that has come out as a result of what is called the JFK Act of 1992. All right, and that came about because of the uproar that was created because of Oliver Stone's film JFK, which was released in December of 1991. And so Congress, because at the end of that movie there was a tag said that the files of the House Select Committee will not be declassified until 2029 or something like that. All right, and so that created an uproar, faxes, telegrams, phone calls, letters on Capitol Hill, and they decided to go ahead and pass a new law called the JFK Act, which created something called the ARB, the Assassination Records Review Board. And that particular body stayed in business for about 4 years, and they declassified a heck of a lot of documents. And then they folded up in 1998, and everything was supposed to be declassified no matter what, 25 years after. All right? And that was when everybody was expecting Donald Trump to go ahead and live up to his tweet and declassify everything in the JFK case, October the 26th, 2017. Well, Trump backed out of that, and then he said, we'll give you 6 months more. All right? And so then everybody's waiting for April 26th, and he did another salsa dance around that one, and now he extended it to 2021. All right? So in other words, the American public is going to have to wait 58 years to get every last document, okay, out of the government about the assassination of JFK, which they said Oswald did it acting alone back in 1964. Now, if you don't think that having 58 years is enough time for these intelligence agencies to scrub documents, alter documents, get rid of documents, etc., then you don't know the way these guys work. All right? So I've become very discouraged about the whole thing, really, and disappointed.
And what was released? Did you find anything of value?
Oh, yeah. See, one of the worst things that the mainstream media did is it tried to say that nothing that was declassified by the ARB stemming back to about 1993, 1994, was of any value. I mean, they actually, Rachel Maddow was one of the worst people about this. Chris Matthews was in second, and she said, this is what she did, and I wrote about it on my website. She broadcast a rerun of Tom Pettit, who passed away a long time ago, a former NBC reporter, going in to the National Archives on the very first day of the JFK Act. The very first day. And he was walking through stuff, which he obviously didn't know what he was looking at, saying, well, that's not new, we knew that, etc. And he didn't even know he was pointing to Warren Commission documents. That's how dumb this guy was. All right? Now, I had a friend who went in there that same day, and he said he was surprised, shocked really, by how many documents had so-called RIF numbers on them. What does that mean? If a document was not about to be released, in other words, the FBI or the CIA or the State Department said we don't want to we don't want to release this because we have reservations about in it, they would tag it with something called a RIF number, which means it's referred to the future. All right? So Tom Pettit, of course, didn't even say that so many of those documents were tagged with RIF numbers, and Rachel Maddow probably doesn't even know what the heck that is. All right? And so from then on, it just got just as bad. But there's been literally, you're talking hundreds of very, very interesting documents that have been released. Well, let's put it this way. The time period in which the review board was in action 1994 to 1998, there were 60,000 specific documents released, clocking in at something like 4 million pages. Okay? All right? Now, what we found out that's so interesting since is that the review board left almost as many documents behind as they declassified. All right? Because I've seen a number of about 55,000 documents that were either redacted in part or withheld, or what they call withheld in full. Redaction, of course, refers to the fact that the originating agency either whited out or blacked out a certain amount of pages or words in a page. Okay? Withheld in full means that they don't want to give up the document at all. All right? All right, so that's what was so amazing about what has happened since late October. There's been so many documents that we found out that the RRB just didn't deal with in any effective way. All right? Now, I can go into some of these things if you want me to, some of these specific documents and some of these specific discoveries. All right, to name just a few, I have an FBI report here sitting on my bookcase in which something like 2 days after the assassination, the FBI interviewed a guy who had a sound, a sound recording studio in Dallas, and he said that Jack Ruby had been there about 2 weeks before the assassination because he wanted to put in a new sound system, for his club. All right, and they exchanged names and phone numbers and everything. And then Jack called this friend over, and he said, take down his name. I want to get him a free pass to the club. And it was Oswald.
Really?
Yes, that's in an FBI document. All right. Okay. Now, another interesting document deals with Oswald being allegedly in Mexico City. All right, and it says that for the Warren Commission, the CIA insisted that they blacked out the description by Sylvia Duran of the man who visited, the Cuban consulate down in Mexico City. All right, now, I should give you some background on this. Okay, the Warren Commission says that Oswald visited Mexico City in late September, early October of 1963, and he tried to go ahead and get a in-transit visa that would get him from Mexico City to Cuba to Russia. Right? And he failed to get it. All right, now this was very incriminating of Oswald. The person who dealt with him most down there was Sylvia Duran, who was the receptionist at the Cuban consulate. Right? Now, it turns out that the CIA decided to cut out the description of Oswald, that he was short and blonde. Now, anybody who knows anything about this case knows that Oswald was not short and blonde. He was about medium height with dark brown hair. All right? So in other words, what they wanted to cut out was something that would lead to the assumption that Oswald was being impersonated in Mexico City 7 weeks before the Kennedy assassination. Because that would lead to all kinds, of really kind of weird deductions as to why would Oswald be impersonated down in Mexico City? And did Oswald ever go to Mexico City?
Well, also too, didn't it come out that that Cuban consulate was wiretapped? That we had wiretaps going on there?
Well, we had what they call surveillance devices on both the Soviet and the Cuban consulate, on both of them. All All right, both the places Oswald went to. And I'm sure you know that when the FBI got the alleged tapes of Oswald visiting the Cuban consulate, you know, the agent said, this isn't Oswald. This isn't the guy we have in detention right now in Dallas, and we're questioning. All right? So here you have evidence that it wasn't Oswald's voice on the tapes, and Oswald was being impersonated in Mexico City. All right? So this is very interesting stuff, I believe. I don't care what Rachel Maddow has to say. She obviously hasn't read any of it. Okay? But that's what you can get away with in the media.
Yeah, it's so true. Hey, now, what do you make of Trump holding us up to 2021? Because if he doesn't run for re-election, he would be out of office by then.
Well, you know, I really don't know what to make of that. I don't know why he did this, you know, but it's the second time, you know. Although I will give him some credit because some of the documents that were declassified last week, a week and a half ago, you know, they were released in a more unredacted form than they had been. But in my opinion, you know, there's no excuse for any of this, you know, to be held back at this point. You know, in my opinion, what these guys are doing is breaking the law, because the JFK Act said back in 1992 that there should not be any redactions, all right, at all in 2017.
Oh, really?
All right, they said the only exceptions would be if there was still an agent in place or an ongoing operation. All right? The other one would be the IRS, but that's always been understood, you know, the IRS thing. Okay? But those are the two exceptions. Now, I'm sorry, I don't believe that 55 years later that there's still an agent in place, you know, from 1963, 1964, all right? And I don't believe there's an ongoing operation that's been going on since I just don't buy that stuff, you know? And obviously Trump did not make them prove their case. See, the thing about the ARB, the Assassinations Record and Review Board, is that the CIA and the FBI had to prove why something should still stay classified. You know, what is the danger to America versus the benefit of having full disclosure? You know, see, I don't believe, I just don't think that Trump, you know, set anything like that up. He should have, but he didn't. Okay? And I think this is very corrosive, you know, of democracy.
Yeah, now what about are there any documents suspicious that they look like they're planted or disinfo, forgery type of?
Well, actually, you know, there has been a few cases of that. All right, there has been where people have looked at something and says, you know, this looks like somebody inserted something in here.
Yeah.
All right, okay, and like I said at the beginning, if you give enough people that much time, you know, they can go ahead and do it. You know, and they will do it. I mean, there's no question about that.
Why don't you, since, by the way, I want to thank you for coming back today, because we just interviewed you yesterday, and then I had a scheduling mishap, and you were kind enough to come back again today. But yesterday you were telling us about the description of your book, JFK Assassinations, The Evidence Today. Why don't you go over that whole thing about Tom Hanks again?
Okay. This book that just came out about, I think, on May the 1st, all right, you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or at Skyhorse, their web. That's the publisher. This is really a book that it's about the JFK assassination, but it's a lot bigger than that. All right, it has three general parts to it. Okay, it has part one deals with Vincent Bugliosi and his reputation, and this mock trial that he took part in that caused him to write his book, Reclaiming History. The second part is essentially based on that book. It's a massive critique, and this is where I go into all the evidence today. What is the status of the evidence in the JFK case today? What is the status of, for example, the alleged rifle that Oswald ordered? All right, CE-399, the so-called magic bullet. What do we know about the autopsy? Okay, things like that. All right, and the last part deals with Tom Hanks and the lesser extent Steven Spielberg, and it's about Tom Hanks being the amateur historian from history of the Republic. All right, I go to depth. I examine 3 of his productions, which are in order. Charlie Wilson's War, which is about Afghanistan. Then I go into his film on the JFK case called Parkland, which is absolutely horrendous. All right. And then I deal with his latest production called The Post, with Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep as the main actors. All right. And I really, I really did not show him a lot of mercy, because I think that those 3 films are very deceiving, and I think they set up false heroes, and I think they also set up false history. All right? And they do not serve the interests of historical truth or honesty. And I really, really, truly believe that one of the reasons this country is such a mess today, all right, is because of that kind of attitude. That people somehow cannot honestly deal with the things in the past. And if you can't honestly deal with things that have already happened, then you can't deal with the present, I don't think. You can't live in an historical vacuum, all right? And Tom Hanks, in those 3 films, set up people as to being heroes who are not really heroes. All right? I mean, Ben Bradley and Kay Graham were not the heroes of the Pentagon Papers struggle. No way in the world. They were only involved for 2 weeks. That's a struggle that took place over 3 years.
Yeah, Ellsberg was the hero.
Yeah, Daniel Ellsberg and Anthony Russo were the people who actually smuggled out the Pentagon Papers, and they went ahead and they decided to defy Nixon. All right? Nixon decided he wasn't going to let them do it, and so they went ahead and risked going to prison for, I think, a combined total of 145 years. And it went on from the moment that Ellsberg and Russo copied the papers, all right, to the moment that they were acquitted in their criminal trial in Los Angeles. It went on for a period of about 3 years. It was, and so I feel to see how Katharine Graham and Ben Bradley are the heroes in that situation. I don't see that at all. And in this book, I did about 20 pages on critiquing that film, because I believe it was so dishonest, fundamentally dishonest. And I really had to do a lot of homework, because Pentagon Papers is a very complicated case. It's not really easy to understand. So I read about, I'd say about 11 or 12 books.
James, we got a commercial break. We'll be right back with more of James DiEugenio. His website is kennedysandking.com, and we're talking about JFK assassinations, the evidence today. We'll be right back with more of James DiEugenio. And now a word from our sponsors.
WPR Rebuttal, covering the sides of the story missed by Wisconsin Public Radio, bringing narratives the UW System Board of Regents won't allow, shedding light on perspectives the owners of WPR don't want you to hear. Every Thursday at 12:30 Central Time, WPR Rebuttal is your destination for grassroots journalism in Sauk County and beyond. Our host, Senator JPO, provides insightful analysis into stories that are only superficially covered by mainstream press. A recent inventory of topics includes college graduate underemployment, yellow journalism in the media, and favoritism in the public sector hiring process. Get your WPR Rebuttal fix Thursdays at 12:30 Central Time.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by SubhashTechnosis.com. Subash Technosis is a search engine optimization and website design company located in India. So you know you're going to save a lot of money and get top quality service to boot. They offer all kinds of services, business process outsourcing, data entry, banking BPO services, recruitment process outsourcing, software testing, offshore research networking, customer care, press release content writing and distribution, and much, much more. They offer website development, e-commerce solutions, mobile responsive designs. Now, I've personally worked with Subash for over 10 years. This is the man that puts out my press releases. They've done work on my websites, so I can personally recommend SubhashTechnosis.com. You can find a link to Subash Technosis at OppermanReport.com and also AwakeRadio.us.
People are waking up. They're standing up to those pushing pesticides and GMOs as safe alternatives for a starving world. What a bunch of crap! I tell you, I'd rather eat dirt. So I drink Life Change Tea. It's an herbal drink, cleansing my body of toxic sludge and nasty chemicals, and of course, ridding the intruders that are hidden in my so-called food. And by the way, Life Change Tea is non-GMO and organic. No fillers, no yuck. Just a great defense against you-know-what. May the supplement force awaken you. Don't fall to the dark side. Sorry. I went to the movies last night. Anyway, enough said. How do you get that herbal drink and change your life? GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. You will awaken. You will get stronger, and you might even lose a bit of weight. So awaken to Life Change Tea and the many one-of-a-kind supplements at GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. May the supplement force be with you.
We all have questions. Did he do it or did he not? We all have opinions, but do we really know the truth? New evidence will now be presented and the ultimate answers will be revealed in the explosive documentary, Serpents Rising. Inspired by the bestseller Double Cross for Blood, an independent investigation of the trial of the century, the lies, the myths, and the concealed evidence. Don't miss Serpents Rising.
This excellent documentary film is available at Serpents Rising at Vimeo Videos on demand. Watch it for $1.99. You can have your ad played here at OppermanReport.com every Friday night, 5 p.m., and Saturday night, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And on Friday nights, too, we do a live portion for 1 hour that I just do a live monologue. The ads are very, very inexpensive, and they're also played in the Opperman Report member section. In the member section, you can find all kinds of exclusive content that you won't find anywhere else. It's as cheap as $6 a month, $20 a quarter, or $75 for a year. If you contact me directly at oppermanreport@gmail.com, I'll set you up with a little special deal there where you get a discount if you PayPal me directly, and you can get a copy of my book. I want to thank William Ramsey, who helps us produce the show and book guests. You can find William Ramsey, who's an excellent author, at William Ramsey Investigates on YouTube.
To experience American Freedom Radio.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. Don't forget the show is brought to you by GetTheTea.com, Life Change Tea. Stuff will fix you right up. Well, we got our guest today, James DiEugenio from Kennedy'sAndKing.com. The latest book is JFK Assassinations, The New Evidence Today. I want to thank James once again for helping me out today. We interviewed him yesterday. And then last night I emailed him. I says, hey, can you help me out? Because my guest today kind of bailed out on me. And James came, man, right up to the plate, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Okay.
Now, one more thing.
It's called the JFK Assassination, The Evidence Today.
What did I call
That's
it?
the name of it.
What did I call it?
You called it The New Evidence Today.
Ah, man. I got it written right in front of me. JFK Assassination, The Evidence Today. I have been saying New Evidence Today. I have been saying that. That's good. I got a little problem there. Okay. It's funny because you were saying about how this movie, The Post, and it's so true. They say it's poetic license, but the thing is, reality is so much more interesting than fiction.
Mm-hmm. Well, in this particular instance, though, they wouldn't have been able to do that if they wanted to keep the story with Bradley and Kay Graham.
Right.
I think that's what they were doing from the start with this film, is that they wanted to somehow make Bradley and Kay Graham, the protagonists, in the film. All right. And in reality, of course, that's not even close to being the actual truth of this case, of the Pentagon Papers case. Not even close. But, that's what they were angling for. And, if you know the Pentagon Papers case, and in my book, I did some research on this, and I dug into it. It's such a fascinating subject. It's very, very interesting, very, very dramatic. Okay, and to tell the true story, and this is one of the things I mentioned, I think if you told the true story, you really couldn't do it in a 2-hour film. I think it would take more like a 4-night miniseries, 4 hours spread over 4 nights, but it would be so much more hard-edged than this film was. Because, if you want to see just how bad Nixon and Kissinger really were, okay, this is a really good way to do it. And I just don't believe that people like Spielberg and Hanks are willing to do that kind of thing. That's not their view of history, especially since Stephen Ambrose, who was the guy they looked up to as a historian, was kind of close to Nixon, So,
it's interesting too because here we have Kissinger, showing up around the Trump White House, several times, sitting there in the Oval Office, advising him. You'd think that Hanks and Spielberg, as Democrats, would want to expose Kissinger for what he really is, but they just missed the opportunity.
See, Henry Kissinger, if you ask me, I don't even understand why the guy gets on television anymore. And by the way, it's not just Trump. If you recall, in the debates between Bernie Sanders
Hillary,
and Bernie Sanders said that the Clintons spend their Christmas vacation in the Caribbean with Kissinger as one of the guests. And Henry Kissinger is somebody that I would never even want to be in the same room with. All right? What do we know about this guy today? This guy is turned out to be the heavyweight champion of genocides. In the post-World War II genocides, he was involved in 3 of them. He was involved in the one in Bangladesh, okay, which is, at that time, was called East Pakistan. There's a very good book on that by a guy named Gary Bass called The Blood Telegram, in which Archer Blood, the head of the consulate there, wrote Nixon and Kitchener saying, there's thousands of people being wiped out in this invasion from West Pakistan. You know, we should say something about it at the very least. They ignored him. He sent another telegram, and this time he had 21 employees, you know, sign it as a petition. And you know what Nixon and Kissinger did? They smuggled planes into West Pakistan to help from Iran. Okay? All right, it's all in this book, The Blood Telegram by Gary Bass. That's one he was involved in. All right, then he was involved in the one in East Timor, where he allowed Suharto to go in, you know, after visiting, gave him the alleged green light, you know, to go ahead and take over the island. All right, and then, of course, there's the big one, you know, what happened in Cambodia, you know, as Nixon and Kissinger extended the war from Vietnam into neighboring Cambodia, started bombing the country, destabilized the government, led to the rise of the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot. And that one, the latest figure I've seen on that one is of about 2 million. About 2 million people perished because of the, you know, the concentration camps and extermination camps set up by Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia when Nixon and Kissinger destabilized the government and made it possible, you know, for them to take over. So, you know, Henry Kissinger, and by the way, Katharine Graham was friendly with Kissinger. She didn't like Nixon very much, but she was kind of friendly with Henry Kissinger. So, you know, if you're going to make, you know, heroes out of these kind of people, you know, count me out. All right? You know, I don't want to be involved in it. I don't understand it, you know.
I hear you, man. Switching gears here a bit. When I had you on the other day, we were talking about Martin Luther King. And we kind of left off around the time of the civil litigation, the Pepper lawsuit, where it was the judge ruled, Judge Joe Brown from the TV show. Right? You know, what do you make of that, by the way, that this guy, Judge Joe Brown, would show up, wind up later on an afternoon TV show? It was like a payoff kind of thing?
Well, that's a really interesting development. And I'm not... Okay, let me give you the lowdown, because the civil trial only happened because Judge Joe Brown was removed from the criminal case. William Pepper first tried to get the King case adjudicated in criminal court. Judge Joe Brown ended up being the judge on the case. All right? And he did a very good job, and he was determined that he was going to prove one way or the other whether or not the bullet that went through King's cheek, if that was fired from the Game Master 3030 that was in evidence. And that had never been proved before. All right? And they came to the conclusion that the reason it hadn't been proved before is because they couldn't determine whether or not a long crack in the barrel came about because of the bullet being fired through it, or whether or not that was pre-existing, that it already exists. And so Judge Brown decided, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and use an electrolysis machine to put a solution through the barrel of the rifle, a chemical solution, that will not harm any of the metal inside that it comes in contact with. All right? We're going to clean it out completely, And then we'll see, once and for all. You know, did the bullet make that crease or didn't it? All right? And that would have proven, of course, you know, because, you know, if there was no crease, that means that bullet was not fired through that rifle. All right? And so that's what they were going to do. And this is when all Hades broke loose in Memphis. The whole city government, the whole state government went berserk. And then when Judge Joe Brown, rather unwisely, went on vacation, that's when they literally invaded his office, okay? And this ended up, you know, they ended up taking him off the case, all right? That's why William Pepper had to go to a civil trial, all right? So I just want to get that background. Now, I've never been able to determine whether or not Brown was made a TV star during or after, okay? I can't get the timing down, but I think that it was after, but I'm not positive, you know? All right. But whatever, it didn't have any impact on what he was doing on that case. He was very much involved with trying to find out the truth of the case all throughout. And by the way, I should say he's still doing that. Okay, because there was a conference in Pittsburgh about a week ago at Duquesne University, and Judge Joe Brown spoke at it. All right, so he's still interested in the King case. All right. Now, what you're talking about is the civil trial. All right, and the civil trial was held in Memphis. All right, in 1999, and I think over a period of 3 months, William Pepper managed to convince the jury to rule for the King family and against Lloyd Jowers, okay, who he felt was one of the conspirators in the King case. Okay? So, in essence, William Pepper won this case twice. All right? He won in a mock trial on TV, which, by the way, you can still get on DVD, still very much worth seeing. And then he won it in civil court. And he probably would have won it in criminal court also. All right? So that's a very good record that Pepper had in this case.
Do you think that, you know, it just fascinates me that there's a weapon that's never been fully tested that's still in existence. This weapon still exists, right?
It's at the Martin Luther King Memorial in Memphis, which is at the Lorraine Motel where King was killed.
And who owns custody over that? This hotel's like a museum now?
They do.
Yeah.
They do, yeah.
Well, then why don't they have it tested?
Is that supposed to be a serious question?
Well, okay, because they're on the other side. I guess it was a serious question. Okay, but you think if it's a Martin Luther King Memorial, museum, that they would be on the side of.
It's like the 6th floor in Dallas.
Right, I got you. Okay.
They go ahead and they say that down in Dallas they say Oswald killed Kennedy, and here they say Ray killed Kennedy. All right.
Now, was Ray a patsy, or was he in on it a little bit?
I don't think Ray was in on it at all.
Okay.
I've never seen any evidence that he was in on it at all. Yeah.
Well, but to be given that money to travel overseas and make the getaway and stuff like that, he had to be.
Okay, now that's an interesting question, because what you're talking about is afterwards.
Yeah. Okay,
you're talking about after the assassination. In other words, how did he get those identities? Okay, and how did he get the money from that guy who visited? What was that all about? All right, and see that the problem with that is that, Ray still had something like 13 years left on his term after he escaped from that prison. Okay, so even if the guy would have been acquitted in the King case, he still faced that charge. Okay,
for the escape.
Yes. All All right, and so some people have said that the reason that Ray does not want to completely come clean about what happened afterwards is that if they would return him to jail to serve out that, the previous charge, then somebody could be out to get him very easily.
And what do you make of that prison break? Because that was always suspicious to me. Even like the.
Well, some people think that it was a setup.
Okay.
Now I'm not saying I do, okay, but I'm saying that some people actually think that it was a setup. Which is an interesting way to look at it, of course.
A setup that after he escaped, they would have killed him?
No. That they almost made it too easy for him to leave.
Yeah, right.
Okay, yeah. Now, whether or not they wanted to kill him or not is something else.
Oh, so you're saying they set him up so he would have the extra charges for the escape charges?
Something like that, yes.
Okay, that's interesting. And what about, can you confirm that his brother was a leader in the KKK?
No, you're talking about Jerry Ray?
Yeah, no?
No. Jerry Ray wasn't a leader in the Ku Klux Klan. He was associated with an attorney, who worked for the states' rights people in the South. And he went to him to get some legal advice once or twice. Okay, but he was never, Jerry Ray was never associated or was a member of the Klan.
Okay, well, that's good to know, because I always thought he was. That's interesting. Now, what about some of these other cases? What can you tell us about the murder of Malcolm X?
Okay, well, that one, in our book, The Assassinations, we had no less than Jim Douglas do a kind of long essay on that particular one, all right? On that particular one, it looks like what happened is that the local police and people in the religious sect, okay, the black Muslims that Malcolm had split off from, it looks like they combined to let the plot happen. All right, and it succeeded. All right. For instance, we know that, for example, there was one guy who pleaded guilty once the trial started. Okay, there was one guy who pleaded guilty once the trial started.
Okay.
And because they had a pretty good case against him, and he said, "I'll admit that I was a part of it, but I don't know who the heck these other two guys are." They just picked up two other guys off the street, and they tried to make the case against them, but this guy, said, I don't know who these other two guys are. But that didn't matter, of course. They were convicted also. Now, the Robert Kennedy one, which the anniversary is coming up.
Wait, before we get to Robert Kennedy, though, back to Malcolm X, because, I had his daughter on the show. And
oh, you did?
Yeah, but another one of his daughters, the other one who hired the hitman, she tried to hire a hitman to go after kill Farrakhan. She's convinced that Farrakhan was involved. Is that what your conclusion was?
No.
Okay.
No.
Oh,
we didn't come to that conclusion.
Okay.
Now, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not true. Okay, remember that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not true. But in the work that we put together on that, we didn't. Now, and by the way, that's also not to say that Farrakhan was not very upset and angry with Malcolm, because it is true that he was. Okay, but we just didn't see any evidence, that went ahead and pointed to that conclusion.
Okay, that's interesting. I found it interesting, too, that when I had the other daughter on, I apologize, I forget her name, but she was talking about how, she works with Al Sharpton, and Al Sharpton this and Al Sharpton that. And I, at the end of the interview, I brought up, I said, well, how do you, feel about Al Sharpton being an FBI informant, And she wasn't having it. She wasn't too receptive to that one. But I don't know. It's, like what would Malcolm X say? Knowing that his daughter was hanging around with this informant, I don't think he would go along with that too well. So I don't know. What can you tell us about RFK?
Well, the RFK case, which is coming up next month, the anniversary, it's actually less than a month away, is a really fascinating case because for many reasons, for a long time, people just considered that to be in an open and shut case because they said, well, look, all these people saw Bobby Kennedy in the pantry, and then all these people saw this guy jump out and start firing his handgun. All right? And then he was subdued almost instantly afterward. All right, and then he was taken into custody, and he was convicted of the crime. All right, so what's there to talk about? Well, as I've always said, look, in these particular cases, you didn't have to pull off the perfect crime. What you had to do was have control over the cover-up. All right, and when you're getting away, you're doing these kinds of high-level, very controversial characters. There's not a lot of sympathy for them in the relatively conservative law enforcement establishment. J. Edgar Hoover was not going to go all out to find out who killed JFK or his brother, especially King. All right? So that kind of thing entered the equation also. All right? So my idea of the Robert Kennedy case is pretty simple. First of all the witnesses say that Sirhan was in front of RFK. All right? He was in front of him. All the witnesses say he had his hand extended straight out. All right? All the witnesses say he was something like 2 feet away or more from Bobby Kennedy. All right? Now, if you go ahead and look at Thomas Noguchi's autopsy, which some people have called the finest medical legal document ever written, okay, you will see that all the bullets that hit Bobby Kennedy came in from behind. They came in at upward angles. And the fatal bullet that killed him came in at a distance between 1 and 3 inches away. So that kind of blows up the official story. All right. Now let me tell you another thing. If I remember correctly, Sirhan's handgun could contain, I think it was mostly eight shots. The maitre d', Carl Euchre, was escorting Bobby Kennedy through the pantry that night. All right? He said he pounced on Sirhan after the first shot. He said at the most right at the second shot. So how could Sirhan have gotten off the rest of those accurate shots? Now, even more important, I believe, is that a guy who worked at CNN, all right, discovered an audio tape, all right, taken inside the pantry that night. It was by a reporter, an amateur reporter, covering the RFK campaign for a newspaper out of Canada. All right. And this tape, he had sound analyzed. All right. And he has come to the conclusion, the analyst, that there were at the very least 14 shots fired. Okay? Probably more. He said that he couldn't make out the ones after because they were drowned out by the screams of the crowd in the pantry. But he detected 14 shots. Now, obviously, that could not have been Sirhan because nobody saw him reload. But also he said that at least twice, the sounds of the shots are fired too rapidly, all right, to come from that gun. You couldn't get off the shots that quickly, all right? So there's the evidence for the Robert Kennedy case being a murder conspiracy. In my opinion, it's the one that's most clearly a conspiracy. It's the one that's most easily provable, and it's the reason why the California authorities would not let William Pepper reopen that case. He wanted to reopen that case also. But Kamala Harris, the Attorney General at that time, resisted those overtures, to reopen the Robert Kennedy case.
But Sirhan did have a gun on him that day.
Yes.
And was that gun fired?
Well, I don't know if there were any touching them. It had to have been fired because Sirhan did fire some shots. Okay? The question is not whether he did. The question is whether they hit Robert Kennedy, and the answer to that question is no.
I have a document that was given to me by Maury Terry, the author of the book The Ultimate Evil. From this document, it's an INS report. It describes Sirhan attending parties, drug and sex parties over at Sharon Tate's house.
Well,
have you ever seen that?
I've never heard anything like that.
I'll send it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a very bizarre little report. Manson and the Process Church and all that kind of stuff. But Sirhan is mentioned in this, that he attended drug and sex parties at Sharon Tate's house. Yeah, I'll send it.
I never.
It's a rare document. It's a rare document. I just wanted to hear that. And what's also too with the RFK, they went to a great extent to trash the crime again. They destroyed the crime scene, removing the door jam and stuff like that. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, it was pretty bad what the LAPD did. What you're talking about, they took down several panels. Okay, they got rid of numerous photographs. There's a guy named Scott Enyart who tried to get his photographs back, from the LAPD. He never got them back. He had to sue in court. They lied their head off about the provenance of the photographs, and he actually won his case. All right, but they didn't. They never gave him the photographs. All right, which is pretty terrible. So you've got all kinds of indications, of evidence being tampered with, in the RFK case.
Yeah, and ultimately they destroyed the whole hotel, the Ambassador Hotel, which was a historical landmark hotel just for historical values. You'd think you would restore it and keep it. It just makes
that was pretty sad.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
A lot of people wanted them to at least keep the Robert Kennedy site intact, and they didn't even do that. And what makes that is that, well, look, there's a site for the JFK case, Dealey Plaza. There's a site that we just mentioned for MLK, Lorraine Motel. but there isn't any memorial site for Robert Kennedy.
Yeah, it's fascinating. What about this whole story about the woman in the polka dot dress? What can you tell us about that?
Oh, that's one of the most interesting things that there is in the whole RFK case. All right. In case your listeners haven't heard this, let me back up a little. That evening, there was a girl named Sandy Serrano who was an RFK campaign volunteer, and she was standing outside in the back underneath a fire escape. All right. She remembered two people going by her. Okay. One guy was kind of tall. The girl was kind of medium height, very good looking, very curvy, and she had on an unmistakable white dress with black polka dots. All right. They went in. Sandy was still staying outside. All right. Then, after the assassination, they exited the ambassador at that same flight of stairs. They were very excited, running, and Sandy, out of curiosity, said, "What happened?" All right. And the girl said, words to the effect, "We killed the senator."
Wow.
All right. And so Sandy went inside. She saw what had happened. And on national television, I think at about 2:30 or something like that in LA, which would make it like 5:30 in the morning on the East Coast, Sandra Van Oker interviewed her on national television. Okay? And that's a story she told.
And were these people were never identified, right?
Well, not really. Not really. They were never identified, but let me say this. When they put Sirhan under, because Sirhan was very easily hypnotized, okay, they asked him, who was the last person you saw before the senator was killed? Who was the last person you talked to? And he wrote down, and it's called automatic writing,
Right.
where you put somebody under hypnosis, okay, and it takes them a while. Slowly but surely, it comes out. And he wrote down, the girl, the girl, the girl. Okay? On top of that, something like 17 witnesses saw a girl in a polka dot dress inside the pantry that night. All right? And she and her partner were one of the very few people who was doing breakneck speed to get out. Everybody else, if you've ever seen the scenes of that, you know, everybody else is just completely emotionally annihilated.
Yeah.
They can't believe what's happened. People are like, you know, laying on the floor. They got their backs up against the wall. They're weeping. Okay, they're crying. They're screaming bloody, you know, because it was kind of like, how could this happen again? You know, it just happened in Memphis 2 months ago. And here we go again, and it's happening again. It's like a continuous nightmare. Somebody's knocking off these people. You know? And so why then, of course, would they be the only two people running out of the place? But I should say there was one other guy running out, a guy named Michael Wayne. But you'll have to wait for Lisa Peace's book, which is coming out in November, to learn about that, which I think she's going to be on your show. So
Okay, great.
you'll learn about that. He was the other guy running out. All right.
Now, out of all these cases, the only one who's still alive is Sirhan Sirhan. What does he say now?
Well, Sirhan now proclaims that he didn't do it, but they won't let him off on parole because they want him to express his regret for what he did. Talk about a catch-22.
Yeah.
So that's what he's caught in right now. And like I said, they wouldn't, thanks to Kamala Harris, who resisted it, they would not grant him a new trial because they would know what would happen. He was going to win. Okay? If they tried him again.
It's amazing. All these cases, if we had a real investigation, a real trial, it would be so easy. Now, what was the story about Sirhan Sirhan? He had some kind of a psychiatrist or a therapist prior to the assassination? What's that whole story?
Sirhan Sirhan had a psychiatrist before the assassination?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm wrong. I thought he was involved in some kind of therapy or a psychiatrist, something like that. It was, no?
I'm not aware of that one.
Okay, then I'm mistaken. Then after the assassination, he got involved with a therapist.
Oh, yeah, we got involved with two psychiatrists.
Okay.
There were two, one from the defense and one from the prosecution. Then, when he was convicted, there was another psychiatrist, a guy named Simpson Kalis, who treated him in state prison. Okay? And he was convinced that that Sirhan had been programmed, all right, and that the defense team did not use the proper defense, okay, at his trial, all right. He did not think that Sirhan committed the crime, all right. Simpson Callis thought that it was very clear to him that Sirhan had been programmed over a period of time, and he was attempting to deprogram him. All right? And on the verge of him being successful, he was taken off the case. There's a very famous case in Denmark that took place during the 40s. All right? And in that particular case, all right, you had two friends. One of them ended up programming the other, okay? And once the guy was convicted he had shot a couple of people in a bank, all right? And the guy who took the case in the prison psychiatrist, all right, decided that he didn't think that the guy did it because, he just thought that, the guy was too gentle. He had no way to, in his personality, that he could do it. All right? And so he decided to take it on himself to go ahead and deprogram him. And he did. And he found out what had happened, and the jury convicted the guy who had hypnotized him. All right? And so that's what Simpson Callis was trying to do in this particular case. All right? He was trying to deprogram Sirhan to see if he could find out who actually brainwashed him or programmed him.
Now, what would be the circumstances or the opportunity for someone to program Sirhan Sirhan? Like, was it at a church or was he involved in the military? Where did this take place?
He was his former attorney. Okay, his former attorney, his last attorney before Pepper, thinks that it happened at a local card club. Okay, in the Pasadena area. All right, he found an ad, all right, and which he thinks Sirhan answered, for this card playing game, and the guy who was running it was a very suspicious person that he was trying to trace, to where the guy came from, And so he thinks that it was at that card club that Sirhan was programmed. Right. Now, there's a couple of suspects. Actually, there's one major one as to who actually did the programming. And his name was William Joseph Bryan. And he actually, to a couple of girls, the couple of ladies of the night that he hired, he actually said words to the effect that he had actually programmed Sirhan. All right, so he is the most probable suspect for doing the actual brainwashing, and you can actually make, I believe, a pretty darn good case. All right, for that. Okay, and Lisa will, and when her book comes out this fall, okay, you'll see that she makes a very good case that it was Bryan. All right, who brainwashed Sirhan.
Does he have a background in psychiatry or hypnotism or something like that, or? Yeah,
Bryan. Yeah, a long background. He worked for the military.
Okay.
He did experiments for them. He was a technical advisor on the movie The Manchurian Candidate.
Oh, really? Before or after Sirhan? Yeah. That would have to be after Sirhan. Before Sirhan.
Yes.
And how did Sirhan come into contact with him at this card game, at this card club?
Yeah, right.
Fascinating. How many times did he attend this card club, do you know?
Well, I never talked to Larry about that, about how many times that he went there. Okay. But that was his conclusion. And the thing is, we haven't been able to get Larry's files. They kind of disappeared after he died. Which of course is kind of common for this field.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not there before the guy dies, right. You're not going to be a part, right. Afterwards. All right.
Yeah, the maid took it. Yeah. Oh boy. Well, is there anything else interesting about the Sirhan case you want to share with us?
Well, the RFK case is, see, and I've said this many times before, is that we tend to get involved in the detective part of it. Okay? Like who did what's the evidence for that? Okay? And we somehow, a lot of times, we miss what's going on in the big picture. All right? Which is a complaint of mine. All right? See, the assassination of Robert Kennedy was really the climax to that era. All right? It was really the end. People talk about the 60s, and I'm old enough to recall that. It was a sensational decade. Nothing been like it since. All right? When you look at it historically, there's three phases. There's the Camelot 60s, the early 1960s, when Kennedy had just been elected, and I call that the Leave It to Beaver 60s. Okay, if you recall that program.
Oh yeah.
How innocent everything was, how idealistic, was kind of living in a Never Land. All right. Then, when Kennedy was killed, then came what I call the angry 60s. Okay? Vietnam, the civil rights movement, the huge demonstrations, the protests, Kent State, Jackson State, people getting killed. All right? America falling apart. The Chicago Convention of 19, and then after Bobby Kennedy was killed, since he was the last great hope of that decade, then you had what I call the psychedelic 60s. People escaped into rock music and drugs, perfectly exemplified by Woodstock. People just decided, what's the use? Let's just give up. And that's what happened. That was the political impact, the cumulative political impact, capped off by the murder of Bobby Kennedy. All right, and that's what brought us Nixon. That's what brought us Nixon. Okay, people forget that too. There's no way in the world Nixon was going to beat Bobby Kennedy.
Right.
All right, okay, and so that began the whole. Well, I don't think there's really any way else to say this. The whole transformation of America came as a result of that election, because that's when, of course, the hard right in the United States got its beginning. That's where they got started, under Nixon, Spiro Agnew, and later on, Kissinger and Jerry Ford. That's where it all began. And to understand the difference, all you have to do is remember this. When JFK was killed, he was in the process of getting out of Vietnam. All right? NSAM 263, all right, was the order to begin a withdrawal of 1,000 troops by December and the rest by January of 1965. All right? All you have to remember about that is that when Nixon took over the war, there were 540,000 men, 540,000 combat troops in Vietnam. There were none the day Kennedy died. And the war had expanded by Nixon and Kissinger into Cambodia and Laos. And if you add in the total number of casualties between all three theaters of war, that is Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, the latest figures I've been able to put my hands on, the combination of both military and civilian casualties, you're talking about 6 million people, all right, in those three theaters of war. I'm putting in the fatalities in the Vietnam War with the genocide in Cambodia, all right? So that's what happened as a result of all this. And I don't think we spent enough time on that.
It's interesting, too.
It's important to talk about bullet angles and positioning and where this guy was and the autopsies, etc. But we don't talk enough about the political impact of what happened.
Right, and when you talk about how the psychedelic age, how much Leary, who was an informant and an agent probably the whole time, and his relationship with G. Gordon Liddy from the very start. Leary was out on bail for charges. His whole public career had charges hanging over his head. And his connection with Liddy from the start, first arrest and until the end, doing speeches with him. And all these guys, too, these Nixon Watergate guys, were all involved in the assassination. How much of that do you subscribe to, that all these Watergate...
it's very interesting that some of the people that were involved in the Watergate break-in, all right, were recruited by E. Howard Hunt.
Right.
All right. And to the day he died, E. Howard Hunt could not explain where he was on November the 22nd, 1963. And there's a famous document where James Angleton and Richard Helms are talking about, we have to create an alibi for Hunt being in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963.
Oh, really?
All right. And then Hunt creates the Plumbers Group. He goes down to Miami, and he recruits these guys. And I think I'm not positive, but I think every one of those guys was involved some way with the Bay of Pigs.
Yep.
All right, and it's you really got to wonder. Talk about a continuum.
Yeah.
There's some very interesting connections between the JFK assassination and the whole Watergate scandal. And Watergate, by the way, was a lot bigger than just a break-in. It was a lot bigger than that. Okay? I mean, if you study the whole Watergate thing, it's almost like a war. Okay? And, of course, it climaxed with Hunt and those Cubans breaking in to Daniel Ellsberg's office, his psychiatrist's office.
Right.
To try and get dirt, on Daniel Ellsberg. Because Nixon and Kissinger just completely went crazy, all right, when the Pentagon Papers began appearing. They completely overreacted, and they wanted some dirt on Daniel Ellsberg, so Hunt goes out to Los Angeles with some of these Cubans, breaks into Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office. All right? Nixon wants him to prepare a profile to smear him in the press. That's how nutty Nixon was.
We just got some documents real quick of after Chappaquiddick. Nixon sent Hunt down there to Chappaquiddick, and they were
Right.
Yeah, you're aware of that then. Yeah, right. And Hunt was writing letters trying to get the Kennedy on perjury charges. He was writing letters to the Fraud and Ethics Committee in Congress there, trying to get him on perjury. These guys were like full time, man.
And the thing, what the heck is a guy like that doing working in the White House?
Well, I had Sturgis's nephew on my show, Jim Hunt, who's a college law professor in Texas. I've had him on the show, and he talks about how Frank Sturgis had his own B-25 bomber. He had his own bomber jet as a private citizen. Okay. Okay. Anyway, Jim Hunt, too, when he was a teenager, he was helping him make napalm. They were making napalm bombs and stuff in a garage down there and stuff. Mm-hmm. He's got some great stories. But, here's one of the Watergate burglars had his own B-25 bomber, and no one knows about it. No one talks about it.
Mm-hmm. Pretty crazy.
It really is. It really, that's funny too. You mentioned that lawsuit too, with where Hunt had to come up with his alibi. I knew A.J. Weberman when I was a teenager back in New York City when I was 17 years old, and A.J. was coming out with that book, the first book, Coup d'Etat in America.
Mm-hmm.
Rob,
well, this stuff about the alibi, that's gone over in Mark Lane's book. Okay, one of the books that came out at the time of JFK, Plausible Denial, because he actually tried Hunt in court. Okay, and the stuff in that book all came out because of court documents.
Right.
So it's very, very, very reliable. That he had a witness that actually saw the document, and then it turned out later that the document was shown to this witness, Joe Treno, by Angleton himself. All right. So whether the document is fake or whether it's real, okay, this guy saw it and Angleton showed it to him. All right? And on top of that, Hunt could not explain in court where the heck he was because his alibi witnesses all fell apart. All right? So, when you can't explain where you are, I mean, I can tell you exactly where I was.
Yeah.
On November 22nd, 1963. I was sitting near the windows in my 6th grade class at Columbus School in Erie, Pennsylvania. I was about the 4th person down when the announcement came on the intercom that President Kennedy had been shot in Dallas, all right, and we're suspending school for the rest of the day. I know where I was. Okay.
Oh, James, we're out of time, James. James DiEugenio, and I'm going to plug your book and stuff like that when we go, because I have another couple of minutes. So thank you, James DiEugenio. The website is kennedysandking.com. The latest book is JFK Assassinations, The Evidence Today. Thank you, James.
Hey, thank you so much.
Hey, God bless you, brother. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, they had James DiEugenio. Once again, I want to thank him publicly for helping me out at the last minute. I was supposed to have Rob Shooter on the show, who was from Naughty Gossip, you know? And, first he said he was going to come on the show. Then he said he could only do a half hour. And then when we tried to call him before the show, he was indisposed. He was unable to come to the phone. We got his voicemail. So I had a kind of riff there for a half hour. Then we had James DiEugenio, KennedysandKing.com, and the new book is The JFK Assassination. And now a word from our sponsors.
WPR Rebuttal, covering the sides of the story missed by Wisconsin Public Radio, bringing narratives the UW System Board of Regents won't allow, shedding light on perspectives the owners of WPR don't want you to hear. Every Thursday at 12:30 Central Time, WPR Rebuttal is your destination for grassroots journalism in Sauk County and beyond. Our host, Senator JPO, provides insightful analysis into stories that are only superficially covered by mainstream press. A recent inventory of topics includes college graduate underemployment, yellow journalism in the media, and favoritism in the public sector hiring process. Get your WPR Rebuttal fix Thursdays at 12:30 Central Time.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by SubhashTechnosis.com. Subash Technosis is a search engine optimization and website design company located in India. So you know you're going to save a lot of money and get top quality service to boot. They offer all kinds of services, business process outsourcing, data entry, banking BPO services, recruitment process outsourcing, software testing, offshore research networking, customer care, press release content writing and distribution, and much, much more. They offer website development, e-commerce solutions, mobile responsive designs. Now, I've personally worked with Subash for over 10 years. This is the man that puts out my press releases. They've done work on my websites, so I can personally recommend SubhashTechnosis.com. You can find a link to Subash Technosis at OppermanReport.com and also AwakeRadio.us.
People are waking up. They're standing up to those pushing pesticides and GMOs as safe alternatives for a starving world. What a bunch of crap! I tell you, I'd rather eat dirt. So I drink Life Change Tea. It's an herbal drink, cleansing my body of toxic sludge and nasty chemicals, and of course, ridding the intruders that are hidden in my so-called food. And by the way, Life Change Tea is non-GMO and organic. No fillers, no yuck. Just a great defense against you-know-what. May the supplement force awaken you. Don't fall to the dark side. Sorry. I went to the movies last night. Anyway, enough said. How do you get that herbal drink and change your life? GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. You will awaken. You will get stronger, and you might even lose a bit of weight. So awaken to Life Change Tea and the many one-of-a-kind supplements at GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. May the supplement force be with you.
We all have questions. Did he do it or did he not? We all have opinions, but do we really know the truth? New evidence will now be presented and the ultimate answers will be revealed in the explosive documentary, Serpents Rising. Inspired by the bestseller Double Cross for Blood, an independent investigation of the trial of the century, the lies, the myths, and the concealed evidence. Don't miss Serpents Rising.
This excellent documentary film is available at Serpents Rising at Vimeo Videos on demand. Watch it for $1.99. You can have your ad played here at OppermanReport.com every Friday night, 5 p.m., and Saturday night, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And on Friday nights, too, we do a live portion for 1 hour that I just do a live monologue. The ads are very, very inexpensive, and they're also played in the Opperman Report member section. In the member section, you can find all kinds of exclusive content that you won't find anywhere else. It's as cheap as $6 a month, $20 a quarter, or $75 for a year. If you contact me directly at oppermanreport@gmail.com, I'll set you up with a little special deal there where you get a discount if you PayPal me directly, and you even get a copy of my book. I want to thank William Ramsey, who helps us produce the show and book guests. You can find William Ramsey, who's an excellent author, at William Ramsey Investigates on YouTube. Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. I want to thank James DiEugenio from his book, JFK Assassination, The Evidence Today, and also his website, kennedysandking.com. If you like the show, go to oppermanreport.com. There's a member section with great content. Email me directly, oppermanreport@gmail.com. I'll give you a discount, 13 months for $60. Good night.